It's just going to be one of those days. All right. So like I said, I get to teach you today what a signpost is and how to add it into your rough draft. So I'll get my slides to where we'll be today, and then I'm going to show you on the handout where we're at. So here's your week 6 handout. This is the task we're doing today. We already did task 1, so we're on task 2 and 3 today. So as you can see, I'm going to teach you signposts, and I'm going to have you write just a simple definition where the star is, and then give an example of signpost phrasing. I'm going to give you several examples. You only need to write one. If you want to write more, that may help you when you're adding these to your rough draft. And the other part of task 2 is, and I showed this to you a little bit yesterday, you're going to write your storytelling rough draft using this template. So I've given you pointers throughout. So for example, as you know at the start for Strong 30, you want to have a strong image or a clear, memorized, engaging start. It's up to you if you want to start with your name and the title of the story, just to have a clear place to start. I'm not grading you on whether you have that part or not. Then in the beginning, you have other details and imagery to interest your audience. One of the things you'll do today when you write your rough draft is you're going to label where you've included any of the storytelling 10 techniques, and then where you have signposts. So you'll need at least one of each. Most of those for people show up in the middle. So I've given you a lot of stars here in the middle so you can write what you want to. And keep in mind for the middle, just details that are key. Get rid of details where you're sitting there pondering, for instance, what year it was, that kind of thing. Get to the action whenever you can. All right, so at the end, people tend to ramble a little bit. So if you just stick to 1 or 2 key points to close the story, that works best. You could even end with a simple, the end. And if you have a moral, that's usually where you put it. And then toward the end here, I'll go through this label and double check rough draft with you by showing you an example of how that could look. So this is checking through your draft to make sure you have all the parts that you need, including labeling the technique and labeling the signpost. So let's go back and teach you what a signpost is. And the odds are pretty good. You've already been using some of these. But signposts are something that take stories and speeches from good to great, because this is what they are. Signposts are clear signals of main ideas or transitions, and how the audience picks up on them is inflection. You stress them with your voice. You also stress them by pausing. And the reason why signposts are good for an audience is because we can't see your draft. So signposts help us keep track of where you're at in the story, focus on what you're saying. It just smooths things out for people. And we have these in regular essay writing as well. We just call them transitions. But this is more than just transitions. It's main ideas or transitions. So it's really emphasizing important parts with your voice and by pausing. So I'll give you some examples. So one example, and yes, you could use this example for an example of phrasing on your handout. So I've bolded the parts that are signposting. So to give you some background, I was maybe a year old, and this is true. I was maybe a year old the first time my mom took me on a ghost hunting trip. To this day, so another signpost to let the audience know, here's where I'm at in the story. So time signals are often very useful in signposting. So to this day, she insists there's nothing wrong or weird about that. So a couple of ways you can find signposts or you can write them is time cues, like I just said. Anything where you're making clear the sequence of events. So if you say things like first, second, third, those are always signposts. And then any important detail about where the speaker is in the story. So setting, main characters, things like that. And a lot of times you'll see this in the conclusion as well. In fact, we can hear as an audience that a conclusion is happening by the phrasing. So we say things like, as you can see. I would suggest not writing in the conclusion because I don't know exactly what it is. But for some reason, that phrasing kind of makes the audience start to tune out. I think it's because we're so toward the end that you hear, well, in conclusion, like, oh, cool, all the important parts are done. You just you start to drift away. Some more examples of signpost phrasings. So I found that like a zillion of these online. So like I said, anytime you're giving sequence, first, second, third, same thing, argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, any kind of sequence, like I said. So above all, remember, numbers, focused attention words. So things like finally, first of all, next, on the other hand. So you can also, for a signpost, ask a question. So if in the beginning of a story, you ask something like, have you experienced, if I am mouse in the house was to say, how many of you have experienced a rodent in your home? That would be a signpost because I'm engaging the audience in what is important. You can also do rhetorical questions. Like, so why do we need school? If you're telling a story about why is school important and about how when you were like in second grade you skipped, that would be signposting. But the key thing is not only to write the signpost, but to, like I said, inflect it with your voice. Make it clear by either going a little bit louder or even a little bit softer or pausing for a long time so that the audience goes, oh, right, that's important. So some more ways to see signposts, some more phrasing. I believe this is the last, nope, okay. So I'm gonna leave it on this one for a moment. In addition, not only, in other words, in summary, therefore. So I'm gonna pause so you can get at least one of the phrasings and then I'll move on to the next one. So any kind of transitional phrase, like as I was saying, or as I mentioned at the beginning, these would work really well for a demonstrative speech, but they can also work in a story, especially these last three. The most important thing to remember is, above all, you need to know, I hope that you now understand why you shouldn't eat that many pizzas, whatever your story is. So I'm pausing on this one as well, so you can get that phrasing. Okay, so at this point, I want to go back to the rough draft, but I'm going to go to the example one and show you this. So when I write this, like I said, I need to label my techniques and my signposts, in addition to making sure, of course, all the parts of my writing are complete. Now you're shooting for at least 2 minutes. So to do that, you need at least 300 words. If you're looking for word count, most people speak on an average of 150 words a minute. So for every minute, 150 words if you do word count in your draft. I found that's the easiest way to predict how long my speech can be based on, meaning how long is my running time based on what I wrote. All right, so on mine, you can see I've deleted the instructions again. I just have I have the labels, but I got rid of all the instructions. You can do that on your draft as well when you don't need them anymore. So as you can see, I've not only written technique number 10 when I used it, I highlighted it as well. That's very useful. If you're able to do that, you could also take the little marker key and circle it. That works as well. But make sure you label it. Don't just circle random things and have me go, do they mean that's, is that supposed to be a technique or is that supposed to be a signpost? So for example, I did my signposts in green. I also explained in the rough draft what kind of signpost it is. You don't have to do that. You could just highlight it and write signpost. I did that so that you would know what kind it was. So here I have a transition to a next main idea. So it's a signpost. Anytime you connect to the title, also a signpost. So I've written at least two. You need at least one of each. So one green and one yellow in this example. I've included this example not only in your week 6 handout or your week 6 folder, pardon me, but it's also in the examples folder. All right, so at this point, I want to give you time so that you can write your rough draft. You can label it and use that checklist to double check you have all the parts. So the rough draft is due this week. I've also made sure you have some extra time here. So if you have any missing work, go ahead and get that in. I, of course, will be available via the Meet, or you can message me. Go for it. Use your time.